Okay, as promised, I have 3 ideas on how you might be able to name characters that maybe you're struggling with naming. I know sometimes you end up having to do placeholder names for a while because the names just, any name you can think of just doesn't quite seem right for that character. And in those cases, I think that these 3 suggestions might help you find a name that actually feels like it fits and clicks with that character. My first suggestion, which I've actually heard more talked about as a reason not to name a character a certain name. I guess people don't like to do this, but I use this a lot. Is think of a person who has that you have known, or like a person in history, or hell, I guess you could use celebrities, but maybe not use ones that have like super unique names like Cher. If you name your character Cher, that's going to be kind of obvious what you were doing. We're aiming for not obvious, but to where it seems that it fits. Name your characters after somebody else you know, or have known, or know of, that shares a trait in common with your characters, whether it be how they look, or their personality, or something like that. I did this with a couple of characters of mine, one of which I will not talk about, which was the most prominent one I use this for, simply for professional courtesy, because I work with the person that I named this character after, and it may not be in the most flattering light. So we're not going to delve into that real deeply. What we are going to talk about is Angela, my one character who is the medic on the ship. Her first name I actually didn't use this trick on. I used a different one on that we're going to talk about later. But her last name I ended up going with Goodall. The reason being is because when I first started fleshing out this character, I imagined her basically looking like a young Jane Goodall. And the last name just seemed to click for her. When I did it, I actually came up with her first name, Angela, first, before I thought of the last name. And I was struggling with the last name, but I was like, you know what? I imagine her looking like Jane Goodall. Her last name's going to be Goodall. That's a name that can be the name. And it clicked for me, and it really seemed like it fit for her character for me. So maybe consider doing that if you've got certain characters that have certain traits in common with people that you know or have known. You might find that if you give that character that name, it will actually click for you and feel like the right name and feel like it really is their name, because that's what I found works for me a lot. Second suggestion, which is actually how I got Angela's first name, is kind of working off of words that are similar to that person's role in the story, kind of what their place is in the story. So Angela, medical professional, of course. Angel fits with that. I actually didn't realize that I had done this. I had done this subconsciously when I first made up her name, and then I realized later, I'm like, oh, she's a medical person. She's like the little guardian medical angel on the ship, and she like heals people and stuff. I'm like, of course her name's basically Angel. It's Angela. But that suits her. It really seems to fit, even though sometimes that can give you names that are a little bit too on the nose. But play with that a little bit. It's fun. And sometimes you can find names that really fit your characters that way and seem to click for you, going off of their roles, or sometimes names have certain meanings. Like, for example, I'm gonna get this wrong. Somebody's gonna point out that like this doesn't mean this or something. I've just heard that this means this. But for example, the name Calvin allegedly means bald. So if you've got a bald character, maybe his name should be Calvin, and maybe it'll suit him. My hubby's gonna hate me for this because his name's Calvin. But anyway, we're gonna move on from that. But maybe play with that a little bit. Try to avoid it being too on the nose, because if it is, then people are gonna moan when they read the name. They're gonna be like, yeah, of course, that one. But try it out. Might be fun. The third thing, which is a little bit more sensitive, but I think we can handle it, is using list of demographics that fit your character that you're trying to find a name for. I did this with one of my main protagonists, Simon. Originally his name was supposed to be kind of a little Easter egg, and it no longer is because I changed the story a bit. But originally it was very important that his initials be SME, and it's no longer important. But I knew I wanted his first name to be Simon, his middle name to be Michael, and at first I wanted his last name to be Edmund, but I was like, that's 3 first names in a row. That's not working for me, and somehow it just doesn't seem to work. So what I ended up looking up, because I knew that he was going to be African American, I knew that he was raised on the East Coast, I looked up census data instead of looking up like baby names like a lot of people will recommend. I looked up census data from around the area where I knew he would have grown up, and I found last names in his demographic that ended in E, and I found Edmonds, which was very, very similar to what I had originally wanted, but it was actually like one of the only last names I found on there that ended in E. So I was like, Edmonds it is, and I, for some reason before that, could not think of just adding an adding an S onto Edmund to make it sound more like a last name instead of a first name. But it now rolls off the tongue a little bit nicer. Simon Michael Edmonds works a lot better than Simon Michael Edmund. That just, it's 3 first names and it's bothersome. But but anyway, that's how I ended up finding his last name. I'm sorry, my pothos leaf is in the picture. But that might be something to consider, is looking up the demographic for your particular character that you're trying to name. And not just off like ethnicity like I did in this particular case, but if you've got a character that you know is in a certain age bracket, you might want to look up common names that would have been names that parents were giving their children at the time that he or she would have been born. Because that's going to give you a more time period accurate name for that person too, that might suit them better. Or looking at location where they were born. If you've done any character development with them, you probably know what city they were born in, what state, what country, and you might want to look up common names for that particular location and narrow it down that way instead of just looking at a broad spectrum baby names list. So maybe that'll help you out with those names, and those are my 3 ideas, and hopefully at least one of those is useful to you. If you're hearing my dog yawning back there, thanks, Vader. I'm so boring, my dog is yawning. Okay, if I'm boring the dog, I've got to be boring you. So I'm going to let you go. You guys have a good one. All right, bye-bye.